ξέρει νόμις μας υποτέους, πετυρικά τσιτασούν, καρδέντα computishire, volete investigare, per ascendere a conoscere perfetta implere at laude et gloria nominis tui. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu mulieribus, benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Santa Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostre. Amen.
Se sapiensi.
Ora pro nobis.
Well, gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed your trip to San Maximin and that you are prepared for a couple of minutes of talk. I have been asked to explain a bit or to do a brief introduction to libertarianism, that I will try to do. But I have planned to have two modules we'll have. First, we'll start with some refreshing. We will do a very simple exercise just to show certain points that I think are important, should be explained. And afterwards, during the second module, we will go into libertarianism to begin with. So, and we will go straight to the point. So, basically, that's it. Okay, who here has basic knowledge of economics? And I mean basic knowledge. You all have. You are well acquainted with the basic demand and supply model. Are you all? So it's going to be easy. Well, we will revisit that model now. Okay. So it's going to be important. You'll see that later. Well, the basic demand and supply model says that you have a relationship between two particular variables. One is price, which is actually unitary price, and also quantity or output. So we will call those variables P for price or price level and Q for output. Okay. And basically, the model says that there's a relationship for the supply and for the demand. One has positive slope, the other one has negative. Good. So, okay, I will draw then one of the relationships, and I will ask you to tell me, is this supply or demand?
Supply.
Good. And it's written with an S. It depends on Q, isn't that so? Is that correct?
It depends on price.
On price? Good. And then we have D, which depends on Q. Okay, we have demand. Okay, we'll leave this like that for the time being. Okay, tell me please, how is this called?
Equilibrium price.
Okay. We will call it equilibrium P sub E and Q sub E. Okay, so the question is, what does D, demand, and S, supply, represent? Who can give me an informal definition of S, supply?
The set of quantity produced.
Sorry, you're talking about this, isn't that so?
Yes.
Okay.
The set of values, or the set of the amount of output for a given level of price.
That's correct. It depends on P, you're right. And for the desired or for a given level of price, or price level, you would get the output that corresponds to that level. Is that right? Okay, sure. Okay, the same with D. Who can explain what demand is? Please go ahead.
Would it be the amount of quantity demanded for a given price?
That's correct. So basically both depend on the price. And given a price level, you have an output of a given commodity. Okay, so we're cool with that. Okay, now I would like to ask you a question, Bo. Do you remember what defines the output or the supply function? What are the main drivers for that?
I believe that was, trying to remember back to my economics course. was, I think it had to do with the marginal cost.
Perfect. Marginal cost. Who's appointed? Perfect. Just fine. You've done your homework properly. So marginal cost means that you are willing to produce any particular good or service until the cost, the unitary cost of that exceeds the price. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Obviously, we have other elements to bear in mind, but basically that's the idea behind it, no? And then we have the demand. Do you remember what actually defines the demand? What's the main driver of the demand, according to this formula?
Marginal price.
Who said that? Who said price? Roughly? You've done the homework, so it's not price. It's actually price less something. What? With a U.
Marshall.
Please take it away. It's ring. No? Marginal utility. You remember that? Oh yes. Okay. I don't want to go into much details. But basically, behind the price, the demand and supply model, we have marginal costs, marginal utility, and we know that the marginal theory is what I would get if I produce an additional unit of energy, or what the cost I would incur if I produce an additional unit of whatever. So basically, for any commodity, now we will have the general. This is the general model. And the general model is conceived for any good or service. Is that okay? Okay. So any x, where x is a good. Now, I really want to discuss a bit about the notion of equilibrium in this model in particular, because it will be important for us in a couple of minutes. What is actually the meaning of having equilibrium between supply and demand? Not from a mathematical point of view. That's obviously making this curve equal to that one and calculating the price and Q levels that do the match. That's more than that. Matthew.
The same amount of people are willing to buy the product as are willing to sell it.
Perfect. But for this level of price, it is very important to say that for this level of price, you will find sellers and buyers that would like to have the same quantity. They would demand the same quantity as the supplier would produce. Is that okay? We all understand that. It's fairly simple. Usually it doesn't work in reality. It's a good approximation. Ideas about supply and demand have been around for a while. Before Adam Smith, not perhaps in this way. These are ideas that were developed later, but they have been around for a while with the same ideas. And I would like, before moving a bit further into the discussion, I would like to ask you if you remember, Mr. Carriage, I mean, if you remember the basic assumptions that underlie this model. I'm not talking about marginal cost and marginal utility, we can discuss that later, but behind this model, there are certain assumptions regarding consumers, certain assumptions regarding production, certain assumptions regarding information, some certain assumptions regarding the attributes of consumers and of producers or sellers that have to be considered. Yes, sir?
Well, there's sort of free flow of information.
Okay, yeah. That's usually called perfect information. Okay. What's the meaning of perfect information? Do you remember that? That's certain synergy between producers and consumers, that they know what's going on. Basically, that the word would be omniscient. And not that so, but in a way, they know what's happening. So they have free access to information in an instantaneous way, which is obviously impossible. We all agree with that. Yeah, that's one. So it's perfect information. What else?
They make rational decisions.
They make rational decisions. Always. That's another assumption. Yes. So I will write down the first one. I think it's important. The first one is, we would say information. It's perfect information. What else?
Perfect compensation.
Yes. And what else? Now, what's the meaning of perfect competition? Which doesn't exist, obviously. It's a problem to deal with models that rely on assumptions that are never fulfilled in reality. Yes?
There are so many sellers that the profit is zero.
First of all, let us question, let us go into the concept of sellers. One seller, two sellers, many sellers. How many? The model says large enough.
Yeah.
Large enough. What's that? I don't know, but large enough. Large enough sellers, okay. And what about producers? Consumers. One consumer, two consumers, three consumers.
Also large enough. Also large enough.
Large enough, that's correct. And that's correct, it's large enough. Nobody knows what the precise definition of large enough is. This is getting a bit awkward, no? In the end, we never know we don't know what we're assuming, but we're assuming it anyway. So it's a large enough number of consumers or sellers that have access to perfect information, which doesn't exist, which is also a drawback, a main drawback here, and that will not affect the price level. You must remember that. Remember that. The actions that a seller or a buyer actually do in the market will never affect the price levels. That's one of the basic assumptions. And it was developed some years ago, a concept for that. You must be well acquainted, at least you must be well acquainted with that concept. If not, I will introduce it to you. It's called to be a price taker. What you have to remember is that in this model, both consumers and sellers, sorry, I tend to say this in Spanish, so sometimes I get it wrong. It's consumers and sellers, yes, are price takers. Okay, and that's very important. Why? Because any action that they do, any action will never affect the price level, and that's important. Okay, so that's basically what we have, and actually demand has to do also with marginal utility, and up to a certain stage, it has to do with happiness of consumers. They're happy to consume this amount of good whatever, X, it could be cigarettes, whatever, at this level of price. So that's basically the general idea. Okay, let's, I will now, would like to try to do a very, very simple exercise with you. I would like to ask those that have not studied economics before to help me with this. It's very simple, and it's just to introduce a question that will come right after this example. So I really need you to follow me. It's really simple. Don't be afraid. Let us choose a price level which is below the equilibrium price. I will not do what it's usually done to move the curves around. I don't find that interesting enough for this purpose, at least. So we will choose a price level. I will use red. A price level is going to be P sub A, which is obviously below P sub E. Okay? And I will do this. And now, I will choose another price. This time, the price will be higher than P, the equilibrium price. It's going to be P sub B, and it's going to be here. So now I ask the same question. Now I ask the same question I asked before, and I would like you to explain to me what's the meaning of these price levels. Imagine that we would like to understand what's going on in this model for a given price P sub A, which is below P sub E. You're all following me? Yes? Mm-hmm. Okay. What happens with supply at this price level?
Not enough stuff. It's not enough stuff. I'm angry. You're in line at the grocery store and there's no more eggs.
Let's call it PA1, QA1. Yes. Okay. Yes. This has to, oh, let's do it with an S. This has to do with the supply curve. Okay. And what happens here, Marlo? For this price, for this level, just the demand, or people that are demanding, yeah, they would like to demand this quantity. What Matthew's doing, which is correct, he's jointly analyzing both curves. Because if we take this curve alone, it says that for this price level, actually the producer would like to produce this amount of goods. That's the only thing we can derive from this. If we do it from the demand side, we'll see that for this price level, buyers are willing to buy this amount of quantity, or this quantity of this good for this price level. But if we take them together, we will see that demand, in this case, exceeds supply. Are we all in line? Mm-hmm. We're all on the same page. I will repeat this. For this price level, we have people that are the consumers that are demanding a quantity, this quantity, which is obviously bigger than this, higher than this. And for the supply, we have producers that are willing to produce less. So yes, sure, that would be defined as scarcity, I think, something like that. There's not enough products. Shortage, okay, thank you. Shortage in this case, that's correct. Just shortage. Now, let's analyze the other case where the price is higher than the equilibrium. Okay. What happens here? This is demand. And from this demand, we derive P, B, a quantity. And from this price level, we derive the following B. Okay, I would like you to help me with this case. What's going on there? If we do what Matthew did before, if we analyze the demand side, then the supply side, and then we do a joint analysis. What's going on, Mr. Egger?
It's a surplus.
Surplus, yes. Why?
Because the quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded.
Louder, please.
The quantity supplied is greater than the quantity demanded.
For that price level?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's basically what's going on. Do you all subscribe this model?
Sure.
I'm sorry? Yes? Yes, please.
It's like a physics or engineering model with frictionless surfaces and weightless strings, but it's good enough approximation.
Okay, so it's like if human were electrons or forces. Because we are modeling here human will in a way, no? So we're willing to accept that humans at an aggregate level, for this commodity at least, they behave themselves like an electron would do, with certain precise rules and laws that govern their propension to consume. Isn't that so? Yes, in a way. Okay. And you are happy with that?
Yeah.
Cool.
Like, individual particles do crazy things. In the aggregate, they're very consistent.
Okay. Okay. Let's leave it there for the time being. Okay, let's do the following. And I think this is important. You have all understood. We still have some time, no? Yes. Just, yeah. Let's do the following. Let's do the following. We will try to change this by just replacing this X with a W. Okay. What does W stand for? Do you remember, Matthew? Not really. Usually economists use W, L, or K. Yes?
The wage?
It's the wage. Well done. It's the second. It's wage or labor. Some call it labor, no? Labor problem. So we are saying that we will use this model to analyze the wage market. Or labor. Okay, so I would now need Mr. Carriage to explain what's going on here, but from the perspective of wage, of labor.
Okay. At a given level of wages for hourly work, firms are willing to buy more, the less it costs, and people are willing to work more, higher.
Did you follow what Mr. Carrick said? First of all, we have to say that demand and supply are in a way reversed. Because in our first model, supply was represented, or supply represented firms and companies, isn't that so? Production entities. Yeah? You agree with that? Let's call it production entities. And demand represented consumers, people. Now it's the other way around. Supply is actually people. People are willing to work. Are you following me? Perhaps it's a bit cumbersome, but I want you to understand this. Yes?
Yes.
Do you agree with me? And demand is now demand is representing now a production entity that needs work, that needs labor to produce its goods and services. Isn't that so? So, first of all, we have to understand that in this model, the roles have been reversed in a way. Yeah? So, bearing that in mind, then we go on with your analysis. So, basically, could you please explain the equilibrium and then the two other situations that we have in this toy model?
Okay, at equilibrium, there will be no involuntary, non-searching, sort of, etc. unemployment. When the price of labor of a particular type is too low.
Can you elaborate a bit on this subject, on the equilibrium, please?
Much like in the market for chocolate bars, you have some chocolate which ends up not being consumed because it's going to storage now, and they're looking for people who want it more, and it ends up not happening. And so you'll get people switching between jobs, you'll have students looking for jobs, and it's healthy for a society to have some reasonable amount of unemployment as people are searching between things. However, basically, if you want to get a
You're
job...
talking about frictional...
Yes, frictional.
Okay, it's fine. So you have explained the equilibrium. Sorry to be a bit slow. I will put some speed on this in a couple of seconds. Here, what's happening here in our toy model?
There are people who want to get jobs at a going wage, and of a given type of labor, but can't.
Okay. And upstairs?
There are firms that want to employ people of a event type at a given wage and can't find people to staff those positions.
Basically, at this price level, I think it's actually the other way around. Here you have companies demand. Here, what you'll have is firms demanding for this price level this amount of work, and people for this level wanting only to work this amount of time. Do you follow me? So in this case, do you follow me? So in this case, demand, for this price level actually exceeds supply. Yeah. So basically, then it's the opposite way around. Okay, but let's stop here because it's getting a bit boring. I've made a point. Now let's discuss our assumptions, basic assumptions. This model is used, obviously, to determine what is called the minimum wage. Minimum wage usually is the equilibrium price. Okay, so let us check our assumptions. Perfect information. Do you believe that in an economy where you have people willing to work and the companies willing to hire is actually perfect information? Who believes that we have perfect information? Or at least something like of that sort? Anybody here? No? Okay, nobody. What about perfect competition? What would perfect competition mean in terms of the labor market?
I think you'd have to have perfect mobility too.
Let's consider that you have perfect mobility in this case. Yeah, because in a way perfect mobility would be something like perfect access to information or free access to information, that you can move from one state to another one within the market in order to be employed. That's correct. And you can do it in an instant way. You don't have kids and families, you don't have to look for a new house and stuff like that. So, but what would perfect competition mean in this analysis?
That a company wouldn't...
Who's competing? Remember, usually competition comes from?
Other producers.
From demand or from supply?
Supply.
Supply. That's correct. And who's supplying at this moment?
Households.
Okay. That's like shocking, isn't it? Because we're used to, who have been trained to think that it's actually companies that are competing and not people. In this case, people would be competing for jobs. It's important to bear that in mind. And what else? A large enough number of companies willing to hire people, and a large enough number of people willing to participate within this market. So, do you think that that is correct? That is true? That assumption is acceptable?
It depends on what type of labor.
Sure.
For unskilled labor, under most circumstances, that will be a good enough assumption. For ability to play baseball, that's wrong. Generally, the more skilled and particularized your skill is, the more limited the competition.
Like in sports.
Yes.
So they get paid very well. Father comes from Argentina, we come from Chile, and probably the richest of them all are the football players. Okay, yeah, sure. Let's stop here. And I would like to ask you a question. I would like you to focus here. Here, here, here. Well, sorry. Here we have demand for work. Companies trying to get people in. For this quantity, they are willing to pay this. But for this price level, people are willing to work only this. And I want to ask you whether you think, from a moral perspective, that a demand, even from a political point of view, that a demand and supply model may be applied without any restrictions. You mentioned the chocolate industry. Remember that? You then did that. So you established a parallel between a chocolate industry and the wage or the labor market. So, and I will stop here. It's not more than that. Actually, I want to know what you think about this. Is it possible? Is it even possible for a Catholic to say that wage market can be molded and can be understood, and decisions can be made with this molding without any restrictions whatsoever?
No.
Why not?
Because that implies an entire morality of consent, which is what we're fighting in a bunch of arenas, whether it's economics, sexuality, or any other type of interactions between people. At the very least, we have to have some chunk of the graph cut off, or at least cut off the bottom half at the very least, to provide a fair wage or a living wage, because you can imagine theoretically a situation where people are willing to work for almost nothing. And yet that wouldn't seem just. Things have an actual worth, not just based on, things have a value, like human life has a value, not just based on what people think it does. This chair has a value of some sort, there's some amount of work went into it. Whether or not people judge they're willing to buy it at that moment.
Let the working man and the employer make free agreements, and in particular let them agree freely as to the wage. Nevertheless, there underlies a dictate of natural justice, more imperious and ancient than any bargain between man and man, namely, that wages ought not to be insufficient to support a frugal and well-behaved wage earner. If through necessity or fear of a worse evil the workman accepts harder conditions because an employer or a contractor will afford him no better, he is made a victim of force and injustice. Do you remember that? Reverend Noel? Okay, so I tend to agree with you, Matthew. It's correct. Basically, perhaps it was a bit cumbersome the way I presented this, but what I was trying to show you is that yes, economics deals with men and with social interactions. Social interactions are natural. The community is natural. So therefore, considering man as an electron is obviously wrong. Perhaps it works properly to define certain mega behaviors. I'm not saying that we should not use econometrics whatsoever. I think they are important. But we're dealing with people, with personas. We will be discussing that later. It's not. You cannot have a precise mapping or just use the same assumptions for a bar of chocolate for a person. So that's economics 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1. Okay, so basically we're dealing with people, not with the mathematical entities. So I would say that the worst or the most savage ideas that we have introduced into this discipline is to forget that we're dealing with people that have a soul, that have been affected by original sin, obviously, because we tend to think that we're rational and perfect, and that we're perfectly just and perfect, which is not the case. That's why we have moral. That's why we have confessions, obviously. That's why we have the sacraments, obviously. But to think that we have people which are perfect, one main source of this problem, and additionally to believe that people behave like electrons or things without any respect to its true dignity. I think that's one of the main elements. And obviously, if we take this model, we would say, yeah, okay, yeah, people will not have work, let them die, no problem. But that's not the case. There is obviously an obligation that the government has to subsidize if necessary, what production cannot do. In this case, if we're talking about the labor market, they have to see it could well be that the equilibrium price is below the price that you need to live to live a good life. And that has to be determined. That has to be controlled by someone. In this case, probably it's central government or government. Yeah. And on the other hand, you are also, if you go through the Pope's definition, you'll find a very important word which is almost forgotten in our vocabulary. He talks about diligent and frugal man. Austero in castellano, frugal. Yeah. We have built our society, our economic model, to prevent people from being frugal. So basically, that's also a main concern, and that people doing economics that are true Catholics and Christians will have to also look into that. So basically, what I was trying to do this introduction, we're about to finish, was just to show a bit, for you to have a sort of taste of what's going on, and how these models are used by governments to determine minimum wage, by the way, with more numbers obviously. So basically, the problem we have here is how we are addressing the problem, which is basically it has a skew. It's forgetting that we're dealing with people, that they have souls, and that they need to be saved, that we need to be saved. So bearing this in mind, we will, after this short break, we'll have 5 minutes. Okay, 5 minutes break. We will go into the particular case of the libertarians. It's one of many cases that we could discuss. And we will check their assumptions, and we will see whether they adhere to the traditional doctrine of the church, or if we're finding problems. And after that, we will finish. And if I do my job properly, you will find yourselves in trouble, because you'll see that we are living in a society that uses this, and that sometimes we tend to have a quasi-Manichaean approach to our lives, where we're very traditional, very Catholic, but so we respect all the commandments, but sometimes the seventh commandment is forgotten, or is the approach is not the best, and certain problems that arise from distributive justice and stuff like that. So that's it. We'll see each other in 5 minutes. Okay, gents, let's start, because Father needs us to be doing inauguration at 6. So, okay, we'll be discussing. It's a brief introduction to. Okay. It's a brief introduction to economic libertarianism. That's a difficult word for me. Okay, let's go into this very soon, very fast. We'll have an introduction, individualism. We'll be talking about that. We tend to talk about excessive individualism. You'll find that in certain critiques. I call it individualism plain. I don't think there's such a thing, such as just to consider a person as an individual. It's not 100% right. From certain perspective, from this perspective at least. Then background on this, on some authors that we will study. It's going to be just an approximation. It's on a lecture. We'll discuss about the concept of freedom, which is very important. I think it's the main topic to clarify. We will talk about Menger, Mises, and Hayek, Friedrich von Hayek. People that are, let's say, the milestones of this school. Have you read about them in economics school?
Self-study.
Beg your pardon?
I've done self-study.
Oh, self-study, okay.
I-
And some contradictions with the church. We will have 45 minutes, so it's going to be free. It's going to be a brief. It's going to be an overview. Okay, classical free market doctrine. You all know what it is. That the doctrine that all human beings are born free, and therefore, since they are free, equal, and that is taken to imply that is morally or should be legally be entitled to enter freely into any contract of any kind by mutual agreement. And that's the heart of what it's called the laissez-faire. The market, you know what the market is? Anybody has an idea of what the market is? On how people that do economics understand the market? In Spanish we call it una instancia de interacción. That's I was speaking in Spanish as well. We'll be doing distant translation. It's an arena of interaction of contracting parties. That's how it's understood. Okay, and this market could be unconstrained or could have certain restrictions. Puede tener limitaciones, puede tener límites. Some of them could be, for example, the authority of the government or a certain ruler, or eventually the will of two contracting parties that are willing to limit either the nature or the extension of the agreement they agree upon. Is this okay? It's fairly simple, I think. Well, some objections to market restraints have been heard. This comes basically from the libertarians. They think that, first of all, any sort of market restraint is a direct intrusion to personal liberty. We will discuss what liberty means here later. It's also efficiency, because the highest possible levels of production and consumption of the highest possible levels of production and consumption, or the greatest consumer benefit, is derived from no restrictions or constraints whatsoever. O sea, la felicidad máxima de los consumidores se obtiene cuando no hay restricciones. Yeah? Do you know, have you ever heard about the theory of distributed intelligence? Never? Okay.
Distributed knowledge.
Knowledge, okay. Sorry. Inteligencia distribuida. Sorry about that. Knowledge. Do you know what the distributed knowledge is? Roughly?
Yes.
Refresher?
I know very well some unique set of information, and everybody else does as well. However, it's very difficult for us to convert all of this knowledge so that it can be known by technocratic experts. Okay.
Basically, no, perhaps it's right. Well, let's call it distributed intelligence then. Because it seems that it's not the same. Sorry for that. Distributed intelligence. The market knows best, and it's the only entity that has 100% access to all the information. So it's always maximizing the efficiency of the market, of the system, basically. Básicamente, lo que dicen es que el mercado, and that's obviously it's assigning to the market a sort of human attribute. The market is intelligent. Obviously, una locura. The market is un accidente de relación. The translation into English would be something like a relation accident. I don't know, but it's not a human being. It's okay. Anyway, the thing is that it's lo que dice que está asignando al mercado la capacidad de maximizar, en este caso, una función de eficiencia. So basically, that's another objection. If you put constraints, then the market will not be able to maximize the efficiency of the system. Yeah? And the third one is market knows best. So if you interfere, it's because you are running under an ideology and not because of objective and real facts. I've never seen the market working I never met him in the first place. I didn't know that he had intelligence, will, that he has a soul to be saved. He must be obviously open then to redemption. Anyway, some justifications to market restraints, which are pretty sensitive, I would say. First, strong over the weak, obviously. That doesn't need any explanation whatsoever. You are sensitive people. Ecological inefficiency. We were talking about an encyclical that was published some seconds ago. We see how natural resources are being absolutely destroyed due to this, due to our economic model, and that's a fact. Obviously, perhaps it's not the matter of an encyclical, I don't know, but it's an element to bear in mind. Obviously, it's producing serious problems. And the fallacy of composition, basically, common good is a complex good. Meaning, by complex, that it's not simple. Right? And common good, it's not the simple addition of particular goods. But for this guys, for this people, for this school, common good does not exist. And if it exists, it's actually adding things that will produce utility. So it's a linear function that has a... Okay, you understand, so that's fine. Basically, why individualism? You know, individualism is basically one individual within a multitude. Yeah? I think that we should be talking about persons, not about individuals. I think that's one basic assumption. It's a reduction actually of the dignity of the human being that's being under analysis, so to speak. Alexis de Tocqueville said that this was not individualism, that it was a sort of sophisticated way to call in academic terms an old and very, very black vice called selfishness or egoism. And I think he's right. Some causes that can distinguish this individualism or this excess of interest in oneself. Basically, the Protestant Reformation gave a lot of autonomy to an individual Christian to, for example, interpret the Holy Scripture. Some of the other causes can be found in the Enlightenment, French Revolution. Some laws that perhaps you're not acquainted with, which are very important, and some of them passed during the French Revolution, some others were passed in England, the Protestant England actually. We're talking about the Loi Les Chevaliers. This was after the Revolution, prohibited associations, guilds, and unions, which is like striking. La Ley des Chevaliers lo que hizo fue prohibir, you know better, prohibió los sindicatos. La Revolución Francesa, que vino a traernos la libertad. Liberté, égalité, no unions. That's a sort of strange, isn't that strange? It's strange. So, but that's the way it works. And the Combination Act in England suppressed all associations, and we're not talking about the Pope here. We're talking about Protestants. They're not trying to suppress the associations because they think that they're Masons. No, because they don't want people to freely exercise the natural right of free association. Okay. And semi-anarchism of Romantic age, even though World War is not really romantic, since this was going to be addressed to Americans, I thought that it was really great to put a quote by Walt Whitman, which I tend to dislike deeply. But anyway, nothing, not even God, is greater than that one's self is, or something of that sort. By the way, Whitman is very popular in Chile because of Captain, My Captain, which is an awful poem. That's perhaps I'm exceeding myself. My tastes for poetry tend to be rather awkward, though. Okay, let's go into certain backgrounds. I have enough time. Yes, I do. First of all, you've all heard about this funny guy called. I will try to refrain myself from personal expressions. I'm sorry, I should not have said that. You have all been exposed to a well-known Scot called Adam Smith. Haven't you? He wrote a book, well, he wrote a number of books. One of them is The Theory of Moral Sentiments. Have you ever read it? Don't. But if you read it, you don't, it will give you some sentiments though. The sentiments will be that you will have this unbearable inclination to stop trying. But anyway, he wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations, where he proposes this theory. It was published in 1776, I think, and proposes this theory of the invisible hand. I think it was the right hand. Probably it was left hand, because it has generated a number of problems. The left invisible hand of Mr. Smith. Entonces, ¿me han seguido? ¿No? Sí, me siguen viendo. Cuando quieran interrumpir, me interrumpen en castellano. ¿No? Okay, so basically the invisible hand has, it's a modal. You will see that it's a modal. And because there's no such thing as an invisible hand, because it's invisible. So it's like we are detecting the effects, and we cannot see the causes. And it has a lot to do with Sir Isaac Newton's theories, because he was trying to understand, Sir Isaac Newton, he was trying to understand gravity. We now have other explanations for gravity, mainly due to Mr. Einstein. But basically he was trying to understand how the interactions between the economic agents worked. So he came up with this very strange idea of an invisible hand that does funny things, that we see the effects, and we cannot see the cause. But so it was influenced by Newton. You have to consider that, because it's, how did this guy came up with this? So basically he was trying to, and in a way, this sort of revolutions trying to imitate Newton or Copernicus or whatever have been around for a while. Well, anyway. Against this mechanicistic and materialistic view of human being, there was a school that arose in Germany called the Historical School. Probably you have been exposed to them. It is important because after a couple of years, they had a quarrel with the Austrians called der Methodenstreit, which means something like the quarrel over method. And it's basically, I'm going to that in a second, it's basically disputing whether economics is an a priori science. We could dispute whether it's science in the first place, but that's another subject. And whether it's a posteriori science. So so an idea was being formed that there was a sort of invisible hand, that there were certain interactions done by this thing, which is the market, which has certain attributes that are anthropological. It has the shape of a man, actually. And classical economy, which is the predecessors of the Austrian school, is mainly deductive, while the historical school, the German school, is mainly inductive. And well, obviously that has certain. It's very important to consider this, because if you think that history and that the behavior of men has nothing to do with what you're trying to theorize, you could come up with very, very strange ideas. And that's what's basically happened. We will go a bit further in a couple of minutes, and we will see what our friends from the Austrian school think. And they believe that they can do economics, just like Einstein did physics, by closing their eyes, relaxing with a cigarette, with a cognac, or just with the breeze, and eventually coming up with these funny ideas of how human beings behave and exchange goods and service and stuff like that. So basically the Austrians believe that, absolutely a priori. Okay, absolutely deductive. And I think that that could be a good thesis for you, to try to assess the thesis that economics is a deductive discipline. Yes. Okay. Then you send me your thesis, and I will say that it was me who actually not wrote it, and not that proposed that, and then you will have to put my name there, and off we have a new paper. Okay. Well, no, just kidding. Also, basically talking about the background, I think that before the Austrians, we had the German school. They spoke German, and the Austrians spoke German as well. That's good, fine. Because, well, anyway, it's so they could come to each other in the same language, which is good, because what they were discussing was strange enough. Imagine that they were speaking different languages. It would have been a mess. Well, or perhaps we would never have had this problem in the first place. Anyway, so you have the German historical school, which is, as we mentioned, inductive. They studied and relied heavily on history, on numbers, and not mathematical models, but on history. And they thought that there was no universal law in economy. That you couldn't propose any universal law. And that history could teach you about economic phenomena. And then the Austrian school, economic has definite universal laws that rely on the principles and assumptions that we discussed in the first module, which are undetermined and ill-defined, etc., but they think that. And nevertheless, since they believe that human behavior is unpredictable, mathematical models cannot be applied. Other types of models, yes, but mathematical models can be applied. This led to the Methodenstreit, which is the quarrel over method, because basically one group was saying that, okay, this is a priori science, and the other ones were saying that this is a posteriori science. Okay, but that's enough of this. It's not that important, that interesting. I think that we should move a bit along and discuss about freedom. We have a number of priests here that could explain us with more detail and more rigor than me what freedom is. My idea is not to enter into the discussion of what freedom is from a Catholic point of view. We don't have enough time. But just to show you, or to present you with the ideas who generated the idea, and the ideas that at least von Hayek had, which is the last distinguishable member of this school, for you to have an idea. First of all, since we have a professor from Oxford, let us talk about Isaiah Berlin. Isaiah Berlin was a gentleman that taught in Oxford. He passed away a couple of years ago. And actually he has a lecture called The Concept of Liberty, which was extremely popular. And he's actually the one that, to Mr. Berlin, we can attribute the concept of liberty that this school has. And that probably the rest of the world has now, because it has permeated in a very strong way and fashion. Basically, and it's important also to note the roots of these people. Mr. Berlin was Russian, but he was also a Jew. And he was not also a Jew, but he was also an atheist. And we will see that at least two of the three economic professors that we will study were atheists, not Jew. One was Jew, the other two were Austrians. They were atheists. And it's incredible, but nowadays there's like a direct relationship. If you belong to the school, with up to a high probability you will be an atheist as well. Also, okay, so let's look into what von Hayek tells us. This is the Constitution of Liberty, that's his book, page 79. It's not that it was written on the year 79. Some philosophers have defined freedom as action in conformity with moral rules. That's what he says, not what he believes. But this definition of freedom is a denial of that freedom with which we are concerned. He's talking about freedom from an economic point of view. The freedom of action, that is a condition for moral merit, includes the freedom to act wrongly, and we know that that's not true, don't we? Okay. But let's move it. Hayek has no sympathy whatsoever for Catholic teachings or the idea of freedom. He subscribes to this idea, and this is important, you can write it down if you wish, that freedom is the state in which man is not subject to any arbitrary coercion by the will of another or others. This is the main motif which repeats itself over and over again in the school. It is absence of constraints imposed by the will of others. O sea, está la voluntad en juego de otros. Si tengo restricciones que provienen del mercado o de entes no naturales, no hay problema. Pero si hay restricciones que básicamente es la voluntad de alguien, es un problema. I think that those that have studied political philosophy could explain or tell us what's the implication of this, but this is really strong. That means that you shouldn't be, actually, what's the point of being a father? What's the point of education, if this is true? Yeah. If the market is a sort of God, so if the market is constraining me, okay, no problem. But if it's the will of my father, or the will of the ruler of the community, or my religious superior, no, it's unacceptable. Okay, and that's basically the kernel of what they think freedom is. We will discuss we will go into three economic figures: Karl Menger, von Mises, I'm sorry, and also von Hayek. In Chile, at least, I understand that in the States, von Hayek has become more and more important. He worked actually in England, in London. In Chile, the Austrians were not that important. We had much more influence from the neoclassic school, one of them being old Milt Friedman. Yeah? But basically certain ideas they share, certain ideas. And I will stop this issue here, but I will just tell you that Austrians do not believe in mathematical modeling of economic phenomena. They changed a bit. Von Hayek, in the end, is more open to that possibility. Actually, he does certain things. But the neoclassicals, they use mathematics heavily, and you are laughing because probably you are neoclassic as well. Well, anyway, just kidding. No.
The recommended major, if you want to get a PhD in economics, is mathematics. From many schools.
That's correct. Did you understand what he said? That nowadays, if you want to do a PhD in economics, it's recommended that you major in mathematics, because probably what you will be doing is this very strange and awkward mathematical models to prove that a cow can fly. Okay, I should have said that. I'm sorry again. In the end, you can make some questions. We will put that thing off. They will be able to ask me questions that I will. Those replies or answers will not be registered. Anyway, well, Karl Menger, some ideas of this guy's Principles of Economics. That's his book, or one of his books, and he is well known for the marginal theory of value. We were talking about marginal theory when we were reviewed the demand and supply model. Remember that? So it's subjective in nature assumption, but basically says that the buyer is called. I'm sorry, that the buyer. A product has a value because someone, is willing to buy it. Well, that's obvious. But the value of the products are actually compounded at the margins. Then monopoly, what do they think about monopoly? They think that monopoly is like the worst evil in the world. That can be disputed. Do you think that monopoly is the worst evil?
No, there's youth unemployment.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. One of the most socially injurious outgrowths of monopoly. Maximum production and consumption. Yeah? Any restrictions against competition is definitely considered as a capital sin. Look the way they use the concept of social. They support a model which is the incarnation of unfairness. But they use the word social every time they're trying to canonize one of their particular ideas. They use the word social. But then they propose schemes that definitely favor huge levels of unemployment. Pay. Smith followers, you can remember Mr. Ricardo, for example, relate pay to subsistence. But for Menger, and this is very important, this has to do with what we discussed during the first session, is neither the means of subsistence nor minimum subsistence, but the price is set by propension to pay. It's probably written in the next. Wages are treated then as commodities, and that's what we were discussing during the first session. Is it morally possible to consider the labor market as a commodity, as coal, as chocolate, as salt? Always not. ¿Entendieron otra, verdad? Eso está en evidente contradicción con la doctrina social de la Iglesia. Pero es evidente, no hay que ser que ella más. That's against the natural law and obviously against the social doctrine of the church. See?
When you say that wages is basically set as the propension to pay, does that put the employer in the upper hand, or the demand, if you will, on the wage?
It's a very good. It's a very good question.
Rather than the theory says the price is set at the agreement between the supply and demand, but this is, if it's a propension to pay, then it's the demand who sets the pay.
You're right. No, this guys, or this school thought. Remember, they built their theories around First and Second World War, where actually there was a shortage of labor. So actually, what they believe is that, and it's basically why they dislike unions and associations. They believe that it's actually the one that has the contracting power is the worker, or the labor has more power than the company firms. And that's not that's not true, but there's an explanation for that. Now, just consider propension to pay as the agreement price. Okay. There's no particular intention that by using that word, even though you're right. Let's go into Ludwig von Mises. If I'm not mistaken, von Mises was Jewish origin. He was also an atheist. He studied law and was converted into the school by reading Menger's books. And dominant themes that can be found in his considerations, it's the primary importance of free action of the individual, which basically has to do with freedom, obviously. The supreme virtues of the untrammeled market, and absolute abhorrence of collectivism and socialism in all their forms. We have to understand that there's also a political view. They're trying to fight. It's also an intellectual fight. All these guys were not stupid, huh? They were intelligent people. Huh? Perhaps their foundations were weak or even wrong. They were not stupid. They were trying to fight Marxism, and actually, since they saw that there was a shortage of labor, they believe that any particular collectivism or socialism is just wrong. We should take a look at Mises' theory of action, which is very important. God does not act. No. Well, so we don't have to be very intelligent to understand that that's an opposition the social doctrine, the doctrine of the church. Does not act. One acts only if one is discontent with his present situation. So if I have breakfast in the morning, it's because I'm discontent with my belly, doing all these strange sounds. So I move only because I'm discontent with my present situation. So action can only be imputed to a discontent being. Since we all act on a regular basis, we must derive from that we're all discontent. It's a very sad world then, a world full with discontent people. And negative freedom is a way of calling freedom as absence of coercion, is the base of progress. So that's basically what Matthew was saying at the beginning. Autonomous choice, human actions are always rational and are always right. We know that that is absolutely impossible. Human work is a mean and cannot be considered as a way of self-realization. Actually, they call it a disutility. So it's like utility, but with a negative sign in front. That means that obviously work, as we read in Genesis, work has some effort and we will have to suffer, but it's obviously a mean of self-realization and it's natural to work. So according to this, guys, if you can prevent yourself from working, that's great. So obviously it's good to be rich, and it's even good to have people that can do things for you. Labor, Mises thinks that the labor is always scarce. That's what we were discussing with you some minutes ago. Welfare programs, okay, yes, but are a harmless way of doing, eventually destroying society. Labor unions, absolutely against them. We have discussed why. Democracy, this is very important. It's quoted from his works. He thinks that the highest, well, first of all, democracy is the best, the best political system. Thank you very much, Mr. Egas. Thank you. I will pronounce that thing so I don't know. You'll tell me later. Well, democracy is the best political system, and he thinks that it's because $1, 1 vote. That sounds very interesting. And he thinks that the proper democracy is, in the end, the sovereignty of consumer. Redistribution, remember, it has to do with distributed justice from the perspective of the ruler. He thinks that it's a threat to development. It's not an obstacle, but a threat to development. And he thinks that free market is the grantor of peace, of universal peace, and that the wars that he saw, at least the First World War, Second World War, were the result, definitely, of attempts to constrain trade and migration. Let's go to Friedrich von Hayek, an important teacher and professor, especially from where I come, Chile, in the last years. He passed away some more than 20 years ago. He was born into a Catholic family, but he was an atheist himself. That's one important element. He is a strong supporter of negative freedom. Absence of constraints imposed by the will of others. Remember, we have discussed that before. Associations, disapproved as well. Regarding positive law, he wrote extensively. Yeah? Not an expert. It's rather, sometimes you think that he's thinking properly, sometimes that he's wrong. I don't know his background in this respect, but he looks traditional in this respect sometimes, and he sometimes supports the existence of natural law and then goes back to certain strange and weird ideas. Probably it's important to consider Hayek's view or law that reflects the desire that society should be governed by personal mechanisms which do not impinge upon personal freedom. Who remembers St. Thomas' definition of law? Perfect. Let's move along. And to finish the rule of, I will leave some room for questions, so I think it's important. We have not discussed about the importance of government in this ideas, because we haven't got enough time. It's important not only to consider the human being, but also to consider the role of the ruler, or was the custody of the well-being of the common good of the community. But it's important. I think I have to mention that the rule of market through distributed intelligence, as we discussed first. He thinks that the market has this human attribute of being intelligent and being the only one capable of maximizing the efficiency curve or efficiency function that arises from that market. Some conclusions. Market is knowledgeable, yet ignorant in certain respects. We'll not go into that. There's no meaningful social justice, since market is a game. He thinks of market as a game. So it has certain rules, and you have to play by the rules, and if you win, good, if you lose, bad, and that's about it. There's no moral objections whatsoever. Obviously, distributive justice has no meaning in this scheme. Public altruism is, he says, okay, if you want to be, if you want to share, to do donations, good for you, but it has no real meaning. And actually, since public altruism opposes, it's public, it's from the government, public altruism opposes to distributed intelligence, whatever the government does, because the government is not the market, el gobierno no es el mercado, entonces cualquier decisión que tome altruista o filantrópica definitivamente no va a ser óptima desde el punto de vista de la eficiencia. Okay. Therefore, okay, you can do it, but you will be inefficient. There's a very strong remark by Hayek. We should gain from not treating one another as neighbors. He actually says that in the Fatal Conceit. So that's based, it's obviously not Christian, not even Catholic. Anyway, some contradictions. This is the last part of this presentation. It's just some contradictions with Catholic doctrine. There's no such thing as the book of Austrian of libertarianism. It's actually a doctrine that has been building throughout time. So certain authors believe one thing, the others believe others. But it's important to understand that the mainstream ideas of this group, which we have exposed in a sort of abbreviated fashion, and nevertheless we can easily understand certain elements which contradict the doctrine of the church. First, individualism. There's an evident misconception of freedom. There's abhorrence of the state. Remember that St. Thomas said that even in a state of grace, human beings would need to be governed by a ruler. In this case, absolutely abhorrence of the state. Market idolatry is so obvious. They change God for the market in the end. It's evident. It becomes evident. Market knows best. Market is the redeemer. Market has a number of attributes that not only belong to a human being, but even to God. Rejection of common good. That's evident. And it's important to note that in all of these economic models, all of these economic models rely, or ideas rely on a function or on a utility function. Yeah? And the utility function is nothing but the addition of particular goods or goods. So it's pretty obvious that the idea of the Catholic idea of common good, which is a complex good, is not properly understood. It's an evident contradiction. And that's talking about the immanent common good, because for sure there's no reference whatsoever to transcendental good, common good, which is in the end called stuff. Okay. Unlimited freedom of contract. Okay, the markets. The church says that there should be freedom of contract, but they don't say, or the Pope doesn't say that it shouldn't be bounded, but by certain restrictions. For example, that the price that you get for or the salary that you get is a salary that could make you live a good life. For example, they see labor as a utility and as a commodity. We did the exercise at the beginning of this discussion and showed that it was evident that labor market cannot be treated only as a commodity without any restrictions whatsoever. And finally, unrestrained competition and consumption, no constraints whatsoever, and inequality is never unjust, never unfair. From a social point of view, if you want to put it that way, decir que la desigualdad no tiene ningún tipo de efecto es una brutalidad. Decir que la desigualdad no tiene efecto es pedir que haya revolución. What I'm trying to say is that if you don't address the inequality issue, you could easily end up in a rebellion, obviously. And this inequality issue, I think, is at the base of certain phenomena that are evidently repulsive. For example, the corporate bonuses that are being paid. For example, the wages that certain football players are earning. And at the opposite side of the street, the wages that certain people are earning, which do not account for a decent living. Well, basically that's it. I think that we have some time for questions and answers, if Father allows. Perhaps it's too hot and you're bored of listening to this bald guy. That's a possibility. So if you want to ask questions, please feel free. If you don't want to ask questions, tell me, because we will end up here. Sir.
Can you talk a little bit about the good of economic and material prosperity? So, at what point it gets outweighed by other things. So, if we, consider that, industrialization has increased, the size of the pie, and even the poorest are better off than they were 300 years ago materially,
which is a fact.
Is it possible that due to the other things that come along with material wealth, and maybe inherently in removing meritorious suffering, that it can have a negative effect, or is it always a good, and to what extent is material benefit good? You know, does material prosperity, does it always lead to a more virtuous life?
Los libros del padre, I will address that question in a minute. ¿El libro del padre también sobre economía se traducido con algo en inglés? No. ¿No? Ok.
Fundamental concept of
no? Okay. There's a very, I was asking this question because we have an Argentinian priest, there's a priest, Father Miguel.
Oh, the other day, the critical.
He has 2 books on economics, which in a way address this. It's a very good question. It's not that material progress implies necessarily moral perversion. I think that probably the heart of the problem lies on the way you consider the human being and society. Because it's evident that in order to be a good philosopher and in order to be a good person, you need to address certain problems. You need to drink, to eat, to be properly dressed, to live in a sort of adequate city with all the necessary elements. That's evident. And if you can make your life easier, why not? We have all taken advantage of, today, of the coffee machine. Actually, I used the washing machine yesterday. I got my clothes. Otherwise, I would have come here with a stained shirt, and that would have been unacceptable, obviously. We also, those of us that smoke, we take advantage of the new systems for production of cigarettes that, unfortunately, due to the free market, are very expensive again. Even though they're less expensive, the production costs have been reduced. But anyway, I think that it's a question of how you handle the situation. It's not that by themselves they're good or bad. Because actually they're not moral objects. They're just objects. It's the way you use them, and it's the way also it's the way you.
Is there no inherent good in? Are they just good, or are they inherently good things? Is air conditioning, does it lighten the burden on man, inherently good
I think there
is just good for it?
I think that well, probably a philosopher will have to answer that. I just think that they are neutral.
It's a problem of relation of human activities related to the knowledge of this. In this, we have the art, who is dealing with the technique and with the definition from Aristotle and so on, with the rectaratio factibilium, to fact, that is, to make something outside of the mind, to make products, to make labels, to make all the goods that in itself has rules that are outside the moral. But these things we produce with the art, the artifacts, are for the use of men. And there is the highest reality in the man, that is the rectaratio agilium, that is the action, the human actions, for the good of man. Because the things man produces is for the man, and its use for the man is the human acts that are moral. But directly, the products of art, the artifacts, are something of techniques, and with rules of techniques. This is the problem of the technocratic society, only on technology for production or consume of goods that are artifacts, but not considering the man to whom the artifact is, and the use of the man, that will be always a good or the wrong use, because it's moral, because the man is a person whose destination is an order now large persons and the highest person of God. And so it's for personal relationship, for personal love, for marriage, family, society, religion, and so every human activity is not indifferent, it's moral. Good or bad, cannot be indifferent. But this is the reason because every art and every technique indirectly, not in itself, but in relation to the man who is doing that, and is for the man, for the use of man, is always moral. A painter who makes things of nice arts, no? or literature, or the fabric, or all things that man produces, is from the man, by the man, for the man, and that is in such things are always moral, subjected to the, subordinated to the highest reality, that is the morality of man, that is the order of man to the real, true, final end of man. That is not to produce and to consume material goods. Needs that, but it's not for that. It's for something because it's spiritual, it's the form of spirituality. This is the reason because economics are at the service of man. And there is mathematical rules of economy, but regulated by the highest science and by highest reality, that is the reality of man, that is a moral reality. And this is also in the society. The first chapter of Father Membrial, Catholic Conception of Politics, is to demonstrate that politics is not an art, and not some artificial. There is an art of politics, yeah, but subordinated to the moral activity of politics. It's a moral activity, not based on rules of individualism, neither of economical individualism, nor also the rules of totalitarianism, but these persons who are also by nature social beings, and with this, the common rule that is integrated in the morality of man. That is to understand why the economy should be subordinated to a superior reality of the man and of the moral reality of the man. That is in the subordination of sciences according to the subordination of sciences in Aristotle's, no? In the physics of Aristotle's. Okay. For the politics of Aristotle's.
Going back to your discussion of individualism, would you take it a bit further back from Adam Smith and really say that individualism starts first on the political level with the thought of Hobbes and Locke, and when you get state of nature theories, social contract theories, that makes possible then the individualism of Smith in the economic realm?
I see a progression, definitely. Right. It's not only the individual in itself, it's also the social dimension of the individuals. Both things, both concepts evolved from the traditional approach. Basically, I know that you like Plato, but from Aristotle, Plato, in a way, and St. Thomas, yeah, evolves, and basically, yeah, and in Locke and Hobbes is evident, the war of all against all, so you need a government to actually prevent that from happening. So it's actually, what's going on here, it's the same phenomenon. It's actually denying certain natural principles of man. It's denying, for example, that man is naturally ordained to a final end, which is first of all transcendental, which is God, and then obviously immanent. You need things to live good. It's not that you are purely spiritual, and no, obviously you need to eat. But those realities need to be properly ordained. And also that we are going to achieve this perfection within a community. So basically, yes, those are the main ideas that are destroyed, and you can find the social elements of that probably in Hobbes and Locke, definitely. Obviously, you will find the same elements now taken from the same different conclusions, but using the same criteria in respect to the individual as an economic agent in Smith. So yes, I tend to believe that there's a perfect progression in the same line.
We have some parallel, as example with the biotechnics. No, there is a progress in biotechnics, no, but not all that is possible.
It's acceptable.
The techniques is moral. There's not to be done. That's the no, and that is the also the technocratic society who says, well, all that is possible is to be done. All the clonation, trying to have a clonation of men, and so all these things are moral because it's art without moral, without subordination to morality. There is in the market, they are treating the man as an animal, as a pig who consumes, produce, but not like a spiritual person who has dignity, with contemplation, love.
There is a poet, a Spanish poet. I will not tell his name because I don't want to make any publicity whatsoever. He's dead already. He went to New York once. He went to New York in the early 20s, just before the Spanish Civil War. He died in the Spanish Civil War. You can look for him later. I will tell you his name later. And when he went to New York, he wrote a poem called La Aurora de Nueva York. And in that poem, he said, "What I see is science without roots." And I think that in a way, I'm not saying that New Yorkers don't have roots, please don't get me wrong. But the concept is really interesting because that's the problem. Okay, it's a nice science, nicely built, intelligent methods, a lot of mathematics sometimes. But what are we talking about? Economics has to do with men. You don't understand that, you start with the left foot.
I think what ways is possible to find in the Magisterium of the Church, or in the modern Magisterium of the Church, or in Catholic theologians, and a Catholic model.
A particular one.
Catholic.
That's a good question. I'm not an expert. I'm not a theologian myself, so I cannot answer that.
But
what I can tell you from my practical experience, which is the only thing I can tell you. I'm neither a philosopher. I'm not an economist either. I've been working with philosophers and economists, so we've been trying to do things, together. But basically, first of all, I think that. In terms of the church doctrine, it tends to be too. It has to be like that. It tends to be too general. What is actually the wage that would serve properly a wage earner to live a fair life? It's difficult to say that. So you need to be practical, and you need obviously to work on a case by case scenario. But talking about that, but you have enough elements to judge how to act properly. Probably what's the worst thing is that we don't have enough people talking about this. And I guess all of you have all been trained. I was myself trained. I was personally trained by following the neoclassic school. And actually, Milton Friedman is doctor honoris causa of the college I attended. So there was this big photograph with a, I don't know, a cigar or something like that. It was like wild, it was like God, and it was very interesting because there was a picture of St. Thomas More and Milton Friedman and the cross over there. So it was like, wow, what is this going? What's this all about? So and it was a sort of Catholic college actually, not belonging to the episcopate or to the diocese, but it had Catholic people working there. I tend to believe that in terms of economics, we as Catholics have left have left room for people to do whatever they like. And there's also a problem of I think of you need to be you have to oppose the whole, go against the flow. It's been 200, 300 years of liberalism. You have to go against the flow. And obviously, there's also a problem that you have to be aware of, that it has worked for a number of people. It's the way the liberal democracy is working nowadays. In a way, who's going to stop it? Nobody. Because the whole there's a book by a Chilean priest called, which we should translate, Obando Lira Pérez, that says the following. After Vázquez de Mella, who's a Spanish politician, he says, in liberal democracy, politicians that have won are employees that don't want to lose their employment. And the ones that are not that have not been elected or that are wanting to be elected are employees that are workless, jobless, and they want to get their works back. So basically, that's how it works. So everything is subordinated to getting a job. I mean, getting a lot of money. You will probably not be elected every time, so you have to have a nice piggy bank with money for your business. So I think that in a way economics is the same. We have to understand that the reality of original sin exists. And remember the effects of original sin. What are the effects? The concupiscence. As he says, that's a way. Concupiscence. The concupiscence of the flesh. For that we have morals. But we also have we are ignorant. For that we have the catechism. But we also have errors. And for that we have apologetics. I think that in terms of economics, we have to account for the fact that original sin exists. And if you are enjoying a nice life, and who cares about the rest, it's also an important element to prevent yourself from trying to reformulate this. From a practical point of view, I think that having it's very necessary to have a sort of formal Catholic approach to economics. Probably we should do that. We should start writing a book. We will invite Father to do that. Probably it's required.
The main point is the formation in the virtue of justice, because this is the general justice, exclusive justice, commutative justice, all the species of justice. That is the will, the formation of the will against the ability, the concupiscence, to give everyone his right. That is right, no? That is, yes. And this is a virtue. It's a moral virtue against the concupiscence of the flesh, of the eyes, of the life. And this is the question of liberalism. They are also presupposing that the man, the individual, is good. This individualism of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. owner is making is because this is the reason, because the market is good, will do good. This is the intelligence of value variances of God, no? The providence of God.
More questions?
I can just, or somebody, yeah, go.
Yeah, that's.
Do you think a meaningful distinction can be made between economics as a predictive heuristic? If we do X, given Y, ceteris paribus, Z will result, which is in a manner which sort of is completely predictive and value neutral, like biology or something else. Without particular, like that is something which can be just understood academically and does not require a reference to the good, or do you think that even something like that must have in it built reference to the good?
Well, we have to do a number of distinctions. Your question is hard. In which respect, first, everything has to do reference to what is good. And every action, human action, has in a way, in the sense that it's a moral action. We're not talking about sitting down or any action, a human action that can be qualified as moral, has to do with your final end, and has to do also with, we are Catholics, we know that it's not just that to be a good man, but to be a saint and to go to heaven, delete that, and to go to heaven, obviously. So in that respect, yeah, it's a must, Probably some people don't think that, or don't believe that, but that's up to them, that's not the reality. Since we have Christ, and Christ is the truth, and we know that is the truth, we have the truth, and that's it. That's what we have to do. Talking about the possibility of economics as a universal heuristic, or as approximation to reality, in the end, what you are modeling mathematically is, first of all, you're using statistics. If you're using statistics, you are allowing, at least theoretically, the possibility of certain noise to appear. That means that certain elements will not behave as you would perhaps expect them to behave. That's from a mathematical point of view, and that's why you use econometrics. You use stochastic modeling, and also because you are relying on certain assumptions of statistics, that you have enough data and enough people working together at an aggregate level. Those agents will tend to have a certain behavior that follows a certain actually probabilistic, not deterministic, probabilistic rule. Isn't that so? Okay. I think that what you're doing there is you're modeling human behavior. So you are, in a way, modeling tastes and also actions. Certain actions, we know, follow virtues, okay, or habits. So, provided, and you have felt in your own life, and you have not only felt but seen. You can show that you have to make a decision. And we see what St. Paul says. I don't do the good that I want, I do the evil that I don't want. So, yeah, you can work with mathematical models to analyze certain behaviors, especially if they are consumption behaviors that have certain intelligent theoretical backing. But you cannot extend that to all human life. It is obvious you can model the demand for a given product if you are working for Walmart, for example, and you want to determine the amount of ice creams that you will buy. Obviously, you will know beforehand that during summer times the demand for ice creams will increase. Isn't that so? obviously it's going to be hotter, so you don't need mathematics to know that. You follow me? Because you're just a bright man and you understand that when it's hot, you like ice cream rather better than, I don't know, hot dogs, whatever. So okay, and you can fine-tune that by using a model whose validity can be highly disputed, even though people that study maths and economics will say that they are wonderful, and you may well say that it's actually what you're doing is you're modeling the behavior, the mean behavior of a system, and the mean behavior does not exist. So, and you're using probably you are using continuous you're using continuous modeling for behaviors that are basically discrete. So you can say that it's all a mess. But it works a bit to do some calculations because we're engineers and we like doing calculations, and that's okay. I think that in the end, there's sort of you need to do a sort of epistemology, or you have to define the limits of your sciences. I'm being here. I'm professor saying that I have to finish here. So therefore, I will finish. I think that yes, all our actions that are moral need to be ordained to what is good. Sometimes I don't do what I want to do, and I do the evil that I don't want to do. That's human nature. We know that. St. Paul said it, and definitely St. Paul knows much more regarding the subject than me, so we have to believe in what he says. And regarding mathematical modeling, I think that you can use it provided that you understand what you're doing, that there are certain things that are evident, that if the model says, oh, people are eating more ice cream during summers, it's obvious. It's obvious. Probably what we need to fine-tune is the quantity, and when it goes up and when it goes down, and the inflection point, and all of those stuff that engineers like doing, because they think that they're important people, because they know how to calculate that. And that's basically what I think. So that's it.